Well, hi, thank you for letting us come and everything. And we wanted to ask you, what is the importance of the Miami Jewish Greater Federation?
So the Greater Miami Jewish Federation is not a young institution. We've been in business for almost 80 years. And to really understand the Federation, you have to think about why we were created. In 1938, it was the beginning of the Holocaust. And Kristallnacht, which took place in November of that year, I think was a wake-up call for Jews around the world. It was tragic, obviously, for the Jews of Europe, and what that portended for the future was horrible. But for Jews outside of Europe, and the Jews here in Miami, they said, you know, we really need to make sure that the Jewish voice is heard, that the Jews can take care of themselves. So this federation was founded right at the same time as Kristallnacht to make sure that we, as a total unified Jewish community, could raise money to help the Jews of Europe and to help the Jews in Palestine and to be strong locally. So over the course of 80 years, we've changed quite a bit. In the beginning, it was to protect Jews physically and to help Jews resettle in a new country. And so we were more concerned with Jewish lives. I would say now, 80 years later, we're still concerned with Jewish lives, but we're also concerned with Jewish life, the quality of Jewish life, the education of our children, whether or not we stay connected closely with Israel, and to make sure we stay strong as a unified Jewish community. A lot of Jewish organizations exist, and they're all very important, and they all do great work. Only the Federation exists to unite the entire Jewish community for a common purpose, which is to take care of ourselves, to respect the past, but also to ensure the future.
Tell us a little bit about the programs you have. You have many programs here. You want to talk about it a little bit?
So if you think about what Federation does as kind of being in different buckets, so one set of buckets is local and overseas. Overseas, we're part of a global network comprising 155 federations in North America, but also with overseas partners, the Joint Distribution Committee, the Jewish Agency for Israel, World ORT. Those are our main overseas partners. So overseas, we fund Aliyah to Israel. We fight anti-Semitism in Europe. We fund Zionist education in South America. We provide dollars to take kids from the former Soviet Union to Israel on birthright. We fund JDC programs, welfare for the elderly in the former Soviet Union, elderly Holocaust survivors, non-survivors, wherever they exist. So that's our overseas global agenda. Support for Israel is very, very important. It's important to any federation, especially the Miami Federation has a deep connection with Israel. Miami's Jewish community is very, very Zionist, very pro-Israel, very strongly active in support of Israel. We, on the local side, we want to make sure that that continues. So we, on the local level, we support 35 or 40 different organizations locally here in Miami. Some of them are educational. There's formal education, which is day schools. We fund 12 day schools, which are all day long, Jewish education and secular education. We fund informal Jewish education, trips to Israel for the youth, the March of the Living, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education. Those are all organizations that depend on Federation for help. We also fund social programs, recreational programs. The 3 Jewish community centers, the Alpert JCC in South Dade, the Miami Beach JCC, and Michael N. Russell JCC in North Miami Beach, are heavily supported by Federation because in a day when, you know, Jewish neighborhoods are changing, the JCC really is a virtual Jewish neighborhood where people come to connect with one another and participate Jewishly. So Jewish kids playing basketball is still a Jewish experience. And then quite seriously, we take care of vulnerable populations locally. There are about 20 or 25% of Miami's Jewish population lives at or below the poverty level. Among them are several thousand Holocaust survivors. Among them are new immigrants who came without the ability to make a living. Among them are senior adults who are aging in place and others who are in institutions. So through the work of our main social service agency, which is Jewish Community Services, we feed the hungry, we clothe the naked, we make sure that people have a roof over their heads. JCS is Jewish Community Services is a big agency. A big focus of their work is on taking care of elderly Holocaust survivors, but they do counseling for people with family issues. They have a Shalom Bayit program for victims of domestic abuse. So those are the agencies that we fund. But Federation itself also runs a bunch of programs within the organizational structure of Federation. The Jewish Volunteer Center is a very, very robust and active division of Federation, and thousands of people volunteer through the Jewish Volunteer Center. In the aftermath of the hurricane recently, they had hundreds of volunteers out checking on elderly people, providing services to folks who had negative impact as a result of the storm. The Jewish Volunteer Center also has a brand new partnership with an organization called Repair the World, which exists to get young Jews in their 20s and 30s, to volunteer meaningfully in the community, not just in the Jewish community, but in the general community as well, because for many young Jews, the concept of tikkun olam, of doing good deeds, is a very appealing way to engage them Jewishly and also do a lot of good in the community.
Amazing. We also see with Aleph TV some of the events, with the volunteer events, with the JCS and all the agencies that the Federation provides. And we also want to know how can we, if a particular individual in Jewish, how can they help? How can they participate?
So there are a lot of doorways into community life, and Federation is a wonderful main entryway. And JewishMiami.org is our website, and the Jewish Volunteer Center has its own website, and so that's a great place to get started in terms of volunteering time. I want to say something about how Federation does its work, because our mission statement says to mobilize human and financial resources. So we really believe that a healthy Jewish community is one where people are actively engaged, where they participate, where they volunteer, where they support their synagogue and they support Israel and they're activists and advocates. But there's also the issue of financial resources. And one of the goals of engaging people is to get them to understand that a core Jewish value is tzedakah, and that for all of the good work that we do, none of it happens without financial resources. So Federation runs an annual campaign, and we really say to the community, you know, we know it's important to you that Jews take care of each other, that we take care of a Jew in Ukraine, or that we take care of a Jew in South Beach, or that we take care of a Jew in Argentina, but that doesn't happen unless you do something about it. So it's not just enough to say it, you also have to do something about it. And we ask every Jew in the community to participate in that annual campaign. Even if it's $18, we think it's really important for a Jew to write a check and to put their dimes and their quarters into the pushka, you know, so that they're not just talking about Jewish values, but they're bringing those values to life. And the only way that we can be there for one another, the only way that we can bring to life the Talmudic notion that all Jews are responsible for one another, is if we participate communally. The other thing that the annual campaign does, and I think it's very, very important. The dollars are important, clearly, but the annual campaign is really one of the only ways that a Jewish community has to express that we're unified. Because in these days, everybody is Republican or Democrat or Orthodox or Reform or right-wing or left-wing or North Aid or South Aid. The annual Federation campaign really, if you think about it, is the only way that Jews have to say, you know what, we may be different, but we all embrace that core central Jewish value that says we have to take care of each other.
We saw, well, I personally saw, I'm from Venezuela, and I personally saw the campaign that you do with Yahad. So how talk us a little bit a little bit of Latin America. I know you mentioned a little bit now. How can Jewish Federation is involved with this organization like Yahad that was wonderful. I went to that event, and how much benefit these communities get from being partners of.
Miami is blessed with a very, very diverse Jewish community. And I think it always was, but with the increase in the number of Latin Jews who have come, and the number of Orthodox who live here, and the number of Jews from the former Soviet Union, and the number of Jews from Israel, and the number of Jews from France, and the number of Holocaust survivors, we're a whole United Nations of a Jewish community, and from Federation's point of view, that's a blessing, because every one of those groups brings their own vitality, their own richness, and the groups that I just mentioned tend to be very committed Jewishly. So, for instance, Miami has one of the lowest intermarriage rates of any major Jewish community in the country. Our intermarriage rate is only 16%. The national average is 61%. So Miami is a very Jewish community, and from our point of view, we just think that's great. We have, to a considerable extent, we have the Latin Jewish community to thank for that, because the Jews who came from Latin America came from a culture of extraordinary energy and ownership and engagement. These are very hot Jewish communities in terms of the level of engagement. On the other hand, the Jews coming from South America they're not really familiar with a federation concept. So the idea of an umbrella organization that supports but doesn't control individual organizations is a little tricky. And so there's a cultural adjustment that's required. Plus, when someone comes, even if, please God, they have financial resources, the adjustment when you immigrate to a new country, a new culture, a new city, even a new neighborhood, it's tremendous. So for a new immigrant to come, sometimes they say it takes a whole generation before they feel like they own the community, and from our point of view, we can't wait a generation. We need to engage the Latin Jews immediately, because what they bring is precious, it's important, it's necessary for the vitality of our Jewish community. In other immigrant situations, usually there's a lot of pressure on those people to assimilate. So if there's a wave of immigrants that comes from the former Soviet Union, for instance, a whole bunch of them come, they come more or less at the same time, and then they're in a host environment where people aren't speaking Russian, and where they have to get used to the native community and assimilate. With the Latin Jews, they can come, and a Latin Jew can come to Miami and live just like they're in Latin America still for as long as they want to. They can speak Spanish, they can have the same social structures, the same relationships. So it's a little tricky to encourage them to not to give up what makes them great, but to get used to the new culture of living in Miami. So we are looking for every opportunity we can to help accelerate that enculturation process. So how do we do that? Number one, we do it with our agencies, because that's the point of first contact. So Hillel Community Day School, Samuel Scheck Hillel Community Day School in North Miami Beach, for instance, has a very, very significant Latin population. Likewise, the Michael N. Russell Jewish Community Center. So we love the fact that those agencies are there representing the community, welcoming the newcomers, and helping them in a way that's comfortable for them and their families to get used to living in an American culture. The issue, the special campaign we ran with Friends of Yachad was an experiment, frankly. I talked earlier about our overseas partner, the Joint Distribution Committee. So they have been working in Venezuela, trying to take care of the extreme need of the Jewish community there, and it's absolutely critical and horrible. And they've been working there for a number of years as the crisis has been getting worse and worse. They came to us and said, we need extra money to provide food and medicine and really essentials of life. At the same time, we were aware that Venezuelans living here in Miami were raising money also to help with those same needs. And we said, let's do this together. And it's a way, number one, to help meet urgent needs in Venezuela. Number two, it's a way to help the Venezuelans here in Miami learn more about the Federation and understand what we do. And number three, building community together, building relationships with the Anglos and the Latins. It's good for the Jews. So we saw it as a win-win-win situation to help demonstrate the relevance of Federation. We started the campaign. It was a $500,000 campaign, which is pretty modest, and we started by putting $100,000 in and saying, we'll put the first $100,000 in so that you know that this isn't just to raise money from you as the newcomers. And I reported actually to our executive committee yesterday that I think we've raised about $530,000 or $540,000. So we exceeded our goal. There were about 400 people who participated, and I think it was a good experience. It was a good experience for us, and most importantly, people got food, people got medicine, people got some of their needs taken care of. It's a very difficult situation in Venezuela.
It's very sad. And going to that question again, you say that of course, they came in from Latin America. They have to meet central standards coming to the Federation. You say that merge center. What can you tell to the new agencies that wanted to participate or merge with Federation? What do you think their standards, the requirements, what are the basic,
right.
that you're looking for?
So Federation, I think Federation follows a philosophy of fewer, larger, and longer. Okay. It's a funding philosophy that we have, that we don't, like, we provide support for 35 or 40 agencies, but in reality, it's only a handful of agencies who are our major partners. Okay. So it's the 3 JCCs, so that's one group. It's the 12 day schools, that's a second group. SAGE, which is our education, like our Central Education Bureau, Jewish Community Services, and Hillels that do work on college campuses. So those, if you look at those agencies, they comprise probably 80 or 90% of what we allocate locally. Now, we also do incubator grants and startup small grants, and there's an annual application process. You can get that at jewishmiami.org. They open up the applications every year. And we make, we've given grants to the Tribe, which is a young adult program on Miami Beach. Mostly, we've given grants to K-Space and to Chabad and to all kinds of smaller agencies as the Friendship Circle and some volunteer efforts as well. So that's an annual grant-making process. But mostly, what we try to do is develop relationships with partners. So if there's a need, like following the hurricane, where I could say to Jewish Community Services, we're going to get you money, and we want you to provide extra help for older adults who were impacted by the hurricane. So I just have finished, they're announcing it today, the Weinberg Foundation out of Baltimore is giving us $75,000 for crisis counseling, for food security, and for other emergency needs for older adults in Miami. So Federation's job is to generate those resources, and then we look to our agencies to translate those dollars into acts of loving kindness, Gemilut Chesed.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you so much for all the help. And we just wanted to let us know if there is an upcoming program after the holidays or something that you want to say.
Well, one of the programs that we're very proud of in Miami is our missions program. We take people to Israel on organized trips, and they are spectacular, life-changing experiences. We did the last big one in 2012, and next April, to celebrate Israel's 70th birthday, we're taking another very large mission, and I would encourage anybody who wants to have a great time, do some good, get to know other people really well, and party like crazy should go on a Federation mission. It's a wonderful experience, and I would encourage all of your viewers to look seriously at it as an opportunity. People really come back just feeling great about the community, with new relationships, new friends, and they're life-changing.
And I hear for the March of the Living, there was full.
March of the Living will have a waiting list. They're
Yeah,
interviewing kids
know.
right now, and I think they're capped at 100, 110 kids.
Wow.
And yeah, and our mission also has an adult pre-mission to Poland for people who want to experience the March of Living and March of the Living, and to visit the sites in Poland before going to Israel and
Yeah.
trying to forget about it.
The 70 years old.
Right,
amazing to have
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your
It's
time.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Nice to
Thanks
meet
for
you.
your interest, and good luck with the project.
Thank you.
very
Thank
exciting.
you so much.
I'm Jacob Solomon, the President and CEO of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, and this is Aleph TV.